So hello there YouTube. This is going to be a follow-up to my How Do We Reach Creationists video. Thank you for everyone who commented on it. I got a lot of interesting comments. Although I have to say that certain people took the exact approach that I was getting at in my video, which is disheartening, in that they seem to dismiss not the idea of creationism, but the creationists themselves. And obviously there's a difference between mocking a subject and mocking a person. Even I find the pictures of Jesus riding a dinosaur to be funny. Whereas other people take an attitude in which those who disagree with them, and in this case we're talking about science versus creationism, but I've noticed this as just a pattern of behavior on countless subjects. Pretty much any time someone can disagree with somebody else, has a different point of view, they will tend to dismiss the other person as stupid, often irredeemably so, and treat them in a highly condescending manner in which they're just like, oh, I'm intellectually superior to you because I believe A and you believe B. And not only do I think that that is highly arrogant and presumes that, I suppose the idea would be this: certain people think that, well, I'm an intelligent person and all intelligent people converge on the correct answer. So I'm intelligent, therefore I have the correct answer. Therefore, if you disagree, you must be an idiot, because if you were smart, you would agree with me. And that's not really the case. Highly intelligent people can believe different things. Highly intelligent people can also believe some pretty wacky things. So Isaac Newton, who is the co-inventor of calculus, also believed in alchemy, and you could use countless other historical examples in which highly intelligent people have believed kooky things. So, just something to bear in mind: being intelligent does not make you immune from believing something that's completely wrong, or even being fundamentally wrong about something. What intelligence tends to do, however, is make people more stubborn in their position because they have the intelligence to rationalize their point of view more. So, when someone's intelligent and they believe something dumb, they can come up with all sorts of reasons for why they think it's right, and therefore be more stubborn in their point of view. People who don't agree with you, it might not be because they're stupid. It might be because of all sorts of reasons. If you attempt to argue against them and they don't instantly change positions and agree with you, it might have more to do with your style and the way that you approach them than the facts of the matter. Because, as I said in my last video, human beings aren't computers. You can't just input information as a program and then they'll, you know, respond logically in the way a computer would. Human beings, of course, have psychology. So, just looking at creationism as an example, a lot of them, the ones that aren't just mere charlatans like Kent Hovind, they were brought up in that point of view and were possibly homeschooled or indoctrinated in whatever schooling they got from a very early age, and perhaps surrounded by a social network of friends, family, peers, and their church, which is all reinforcing that point of view. And moreover, that it is steeped within a further belief that involves a heavy component of fear. So, if many of them would believe that if they don't continue to hold to creationism, that is essentially the path to hellfire, that they're going to be on the slippery slope to hell. And so, when you think about it that way, and you approach a creationist, you may think, well, I can just give them all these facts, and that will change their mind. But you're dealing with, perhaps, anxieties and fears over becoming alienated from friends, family, peer groups, fear of hell, which is strong with certain people, especially if they've been indoctrinated into that kind of worldview. And there's all these other psychological factors and really emotional factors as to why they don't abandon the so-called logical point of view, or abandon their illogical point of view for a logical point of view. People don't necessarily work that way. Now, in my time on YouTube, I have seen many videos from people who are former creationists, former fundamentalists, who have since become atheists or agnostics or adopted some other different point of view. And many of them are very intelligent people, and when they discuss their former point of view, what kept them in the view, how they got it in the first place, it's not an intellectual matter in most cases, as I've already described. But never in any of these videos have I heard someone say, well, there was this one person, and they told me what an idiot I was. And I said, you know what? I am a complete idiot, and I am irredeemably stupid, but since you are smart, I will believe what you believe and abandon what I believe, and just follow what the smart person believes. That's not really the way it works. Now, one of the frustrating things, I think, for many, many people is that when someone has a different point of view, it is incredibly difficult to persuade them to your point of view through argument. Not impossible. And it's not to say that debate, discussion, argument serve no function whatsoever. But the truth is, people have to come to their point of view in their own time, in their own way. So if they abandon creationism and realize how ridiculous it is and start learning about science, it's not going to happen overnight in some debate with somebody in the YouTube comments section. I think that a lot of people who find themselves engaging in arguments on the internet, and I've certainly been in a few myself, we all have, even if we also all say that arguing on the internet is stupid. We've all been there also. It has a tendency to dehumanize the other person because you're experiencing them through a screen. You're experiencing text on a screen, maybe video on a screen at best, and you're not really engaging with them person to person. And what I've noticed about internet arguments is that there is a tendency for people to get what I would call a rage high. That they become filled with a sense of self-righteousness and intellectual superiority, and this person is so stupid, I'm just going to rail against them and belittle them and mock them, call them stupid, because they just get high on arguing. I have to admit, I have been there. I'm not proud of it. Probably a lot of you have been there as well. But when you're arguing with somebody and you think that you're right, and you're just trying to, you know, show them how wrong they are, that at a certain point, it really stops becoming about the intellectual point of view, because you start to lose that perspective. You're so caught up in the emotional aspect of it, your frustration, you're thinking how, you know, like, I can't believe this person is arguing about blah blah blah, and why don't they understand, you know, I'm putting out these logical arguments, why don't they understand how wrong they are? You know, you get so caught up in the irrational, emotional side of it that you forget, wait, this other person is probably on the other side of the screen, just as worked up, just as frustrated, and they're not really going to back down from their point of view, because they're on that rage high too. They're, you know, sitting there going, oh, blah, 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 there's, you idiot, send. And nothing really gets accomplished. In your mind, you're thinking, well, I'm typing all these things that are logical and rational, but in reality, you're acting quite irrational, and so are they. And people, so when people engage in those kinds of counterproductive arguments where they just, you know, start calling each other idiots, and there's constant ad hominems in between their attempts to explain their point of view, we've all been in those sorts of discussions, and if you tell me you never have, this is either your first day on the internet or you're lying. That it's quite irrational. And once you realize that it's like, I'm never going to convince anyone with this sort of behavior, then you can start to stop that, even though it's kind of addicting, because that rage high can be addicting for some people, and certain people suffer from it more than others, and those people usually find their way into comment sections, and they're just going to attack whoever they can find that they disagree with and try and draw them into an argument, because the arguing itself can become addicting to them when they get the rage high. So to wrap this up, I don't really have a lot of answers for how to convince creationists, because it's often on a case-by-case basis and deals with the individual and their own psychology and why they believe their position and all of the different factors that go into that. What I do have a pretty good idea about, though, is what doesn't work, and it's the sort of things that I'm talking about. Belittling other people, mocking them, regarding them as stupid is not only counterproductive when attempting to persuade them, but one starts to wonder if that's the way you really feel about other people, then why even bother? I mean, there's plenty of evidence to the contrary, that there have been lots of people who have believed things like creationism and then come around and accepted scientific reality and realized the ridiculousness of these beliefs. And the reason people hold on to them isn't entirely intellectual. And so you have to deal with these non-intellectual reasons and treat them in a way that's respectful, because ultimately people can be highly tribalistic. If their creationist friends and family are telling them they're right and are accepting them, and the atheist who believes in science is acting like a jerk towards them, then no matter how persuasive that atheist scientist person thinks their arguments are, they're not actually going to persuade the other person in most cases, because that's just not the way people are. So you have to have a grasp of how you can actually reach people, and most of the time, and it doesn't involve being a jerk to them. So those are my thoughts. Tell me what you think. Have a nice day.